it's just like it's pretty much beautiful. So something to consider, that if you're using WoW's interface, I mean, if you attune to it, there's obviously great raiders with it, but I always find that that Dominoes for me has been the way forward, and a lot of raiders that I know. Second thing for me, and this is class specific, is a healer is grid. I quite literally swear by this add-on. It's simple and effective. It's a mouse over, it's a click, and bang, there's my heal. I mean, sometimes I feel like grid heals for me. But yeah, I've never seen heal bot. Well, I say I've never. I have seen it very briefly, but I haven't really seen how it works, etc. But I've never really needed to. I mean, grid portrays all the debuffs that I can dispel. And like, to be honest with you, I'm under the impression this is class specific, because I mean I've actually messed about with obviously I ain't got a level H5 druid, but I've rolled a druid to a certain while, and that also shows at any like effects that I can dispel and such forth. So as I say, grid for me is fantastic. It furthermore has the customizability for the shape and size of it too. But to be honest with you, stock settings for me has been pretty much bang on. I don't really need to change that. Another add-on useful for all raiders, specifically more for the admins and the guild leaders of the raids, etc., is damage recount, or whichever DPS meters you want to use, healing meters, etc. When all said and done, WoW is a numbers game. You need to know who's hot and who's not. All the factors that I'm covering basically generally cover the reasons why somebody may be doing that extra 2k DPS than person A may be doing extra 2k DPS than person B. Could be generally it's got a number of these factors that I'm covering throughout this blog, or whatever you want to call it, a video. So as I say, recount is kind of needed for for the guys that are crunching the numbers and seeing who's pulling the weight and who isn't, etc. Another one that I use is Bagnon. I don't know if you're aware of that. I click my bags, it just brings all my bags up at once, makes things more organised, saves time, etc., etc. Again, it's not essential, it's just a personal preference one. I'm just running you through a few of the ones that I kind of find useful. Visual heal. Again, I don't really know anyone who uses this, and it's not essential by any means. Grid generally demonstrates the incoming heals from yourself and other raiders, as long as you set it to do so, and it's pretty much amazing. But I mean, visual heal, I believe, is much more specific. It allows for greater sort of conjuncture when crunching numbers. It's a much of a better visual aid for viewing this. It helps me heal more efficiently. And as you all probably know, traditionally Holy Priests have mana issues, or certainly in recent patches, etc., etc. Well, not I, Rabbi, as you're aware. Usually, as you know, we all know that I used to love my spirit, etc., etc. But it's not only that. I mean, the add-on allows me to sort of objectively scrutinize, whether my sanctuary ticks or a prayer of mending will suffice, or I need to pop that extra prayer of healing. And yes, I am using priest-related spells here, but it's the same across all classes. It's not a fluke that regular. I mean, obviously, me being the other healer in our group is much more on 11, and they are healers on my level, but it's not a fluke that quite often I will be top of healing meters and bottom of overheals. This add-on, I would consider, is basically about efficiency. So it's that's a class specific one, but it's quite useful. Deadly boss mods, don't really need to say much more about that. That's another add-on. If you don't have it, get it, basically. I don't think I've ever come across more than one or two players that don't use that add-on, or any sort of boss related mechanic add-on that are very good. So yeah, that's needed. Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna actually backtrack back to Dominoes a second, because there's something that I missed that was quite important. I've kind of done this for a reason, and you'll see why as I continue forwards. I have bound basically at the bottom section of all my Dominoes action bars to 1 to 0. which is a fairly standard thing to do, obviously. But what it allows me to do is use my left hand, which I've talked about positioning on the keyboard and such forth, without actually like having to look at it. From 1 to 6, I know the perfect distance in the keyboard, and most people should do. I mean, if you know 1 to 0, brilliant. I mean, I know some rogues use both hands like to bash away at, or like, you know, the two sides of the keyboard, which is fine. What works for me though is I use 1 to 6 for, like, you know, my left hand, and then I'll have my mouse in my right hand, and sort of like from 6 to 0, I'll have a spell like ready to use next time round with my mouse rather than my hands. I mean, it allows for smooth transition, and anticipation is the top and bottom of it. It allows me to optimize how fast my brain has to react to the next spell, which needs casting in my rotation, without having to reposition my mouse or hand positioning. I also have a kind of logical progression as to where I place my spells. Like, for example, again, kind of healing specific, but my first action bar contains spells which you use the most, my primary healing spells, whilst the second action bar generally contains the healing related spells I use occasionally, generally my second healing spells, I would say, while the third bar contains buffs and other uses of spells such as dispels and such. And the fourth bar contains primarily raid focused spells such as my trinket CDs, potions, and DPS spells for where there are low healing phases, etc., etc. Also, I mean, quite simply, if you're quick enough, and I'm sure some of the better raiders, if not all raiders, should really have noticed this, that if there's certain spells that you can trigger off each other, if you cast one spell and within fraction of a 2 seconds or 0.2 seconds, 0.1 second, you cast one spell and then you get your other spell cast off. You get double spells without having to go all the way around and cool back down on the action bar, which can be a slight annoyance. Now, as far as, again, I mean, I'm obviously a lot more healing specific, but it works for pretty much every class. There's only certain spells to my knowledge that will allow you to do it perfectly. Like any spell onto chakra for me is absolutely beautiful with that. So that's another thing, reason as to why I use dominoes, and I do actually use that method of hands on keyboard to mouse. So yeah, basically now we've kind of covered 3 sections. We've covered the physical layout, as I said, like your computer, your WoW interface, and your add-ons. I'm kind of going to go on to some other useful tips now, which, you know, they're just generalized tips rather than anything sort of specifically focused. But they certainly have some sort of effect when it comes to your efficiency and how good you are as a raider. My first tip is to pay for a decent ISP, internet service provider, for those of you that don't know what I mean. Now, it may seem silly, but you know, it should speak for itself. The faster the internet is, the faster the server will ping your computer, the faster you can react to the requirement for the raid. I mean, for you tight folk out there, the reason the guy sat next to you is doing that extra plus 3k DPS is because you're too tight to pay for a decent internet connection. I mean, I use Virgin Media and I have 20 meg line, and very lets me down, and that's like £15 a month. So, you know. Second one, this should be a gimme for those of you that are doing it. Don't do it. Turn off your TV, Gary. Turn it off. Radio, iTunes, please focus. It's not like, you know, I think one of my other guildies actually showed me a video log where the guy was going, when you look at the TV, you're not paying attention to the raid. That means that if you see a dog in a tuxedo run across the screen, then you know that's instantly your brain is interpreting what is on the TV rather than what is in front of you. I mean, I have a TV sat next to me again. Don't mind my room, but yeah, that is linked up directly to well, as a dual screen. That will go off in raids unless I need to check something for raid. I bring across my Firefox is what I use as my browser, and bring up tactics if needs be, but generally that is off. I'm just obviously doing this now and in WoW, so it's on for the time being. So that's my first tip, ISP. Second tip, turn off any distractions. Tip 3, fairly simple one. Get a handy little mouse. You see that? Mine's a Sidewinder. It's nothing fantastic. It allows me to change the DPI